You're in and they're casting cement. So they're stuck with that. I just returned everything that I had to Billy and gave him a letter telling him he could have all of his rights back. I had a letter of authorization to use the material when I started. And I think
So
that's where their problem is they fear third-party interest in a possible action.
Well, I tell you too, is I have done so many of those shows with them, both Learning Channel, History Channel, Discovery, and it's amazing how many times they rerun it. You'll see the same darn thing for 10 years.
Right.
Hasn't this right? You know,
And everybody keeps getting paid?
not me, because I wasn't paid to begin with. You know.
Okay, Wendelle, I don't understand why. I guess, what do the third-party agreements have to do with the inability
Prevent
of...
them from dealing with anybody else on the subject that they're buying the rights to.
It's contractually limiting on Lee and Britt,
Right.
but not on
Limiting
Billy.
on Lee and Britt and their company,
Okay.
which was Genesis
Well, does that
Productions.
include the photos that are owned by Billy?
No, whatever Billy does is his business, but what they do with the photos can be
I see.
a problem for them because they're in third-party agreements preventing them from doing anything.
But that's them. What about you? Or you?
Doesn't affect me
So the two of you could use those same photos, correct?
with Billy's permission.
With Billy's permission. Of course.
With with
But I'm-
Billy's permission, anything anything that's available could all be republished.
Yes, well, that's why there's the new photo book. That's why we can do our documentary, because we're doing it directly with the permission of Meyer. He wants the information out. He wants, as a matter of fact, he wants the spiritual information out. He wants people to know about it. So we're not, the director and I are not encumbered in any way, shape, or form by that.
Does he make an income? I mean, is this his income off the stuff?
Well, Billy, they technically have a nonprofit organization. And the Swiss, of course, are pretty specific about what those things mean. So you can always, every year you go over, they show the books. But they survive on,
There's 8 families live there. They all work out and bring their paycheck back and pool it to
Like
maintain
a
the group.
commune or something, huh?
it's kind, in a way it is. It's cooperative. You could say it's a cooperative. And they get some donations here and there from people, I'm sure, and they sell the book. Billy's got 42 books or something he's written. I mean, we've got film inside there where he shows all of the books and stuff. You wouldn't believe it's whole room full of books and booklets and things. And he had a whole existence in the Middle East in the 60s. He was known as the Phantom. He was hired by Middle Eastern police departments to bring in serial killers and mass murderers. I've got photographs of him.
Bounty hunters.
Yeah, it was like a bounty hunter. I mean, he's lived a life, it's like Lawrence of Arabia meets Indiana Jones meets Star Wars meets Zelig. And he's met them all. I mean, he met King Hussein, King Farouk, Tito, Franco, Saddam Hussein, all these people, dozens of people. It was part of his learning about the ways of the world and power. While he was studying religions, he was meeting the people that either were or would be major players on the world stage.
He was he joined the French Foreign Legion when he was a teenager to get medical treatment for an injured ankle, which he couldn't afford. And then he ran away from the Foreign Legion in Algeria, took 2 other legionnaires with him. They both died in the desert, and he made it out. He joined the Bedouin salt caravan, to make a living, earning his way with them. He knew enough to work hard for whatever they were doing, work harder than anybody else there, so he was an asset to them. So he stayed with the salt caravan for 2 or 3 trips, and then the salt caravan was captured by pirates, Red Sea pirates, and loaded them all aboard a dhow and made them slaves. And he did everything he was told and tried to avoid problems while others were getting thrown overboard here and there for infractions of one kind or another. They got to liking Billy well enough, they finally put him ashore in India and let him walk away alive. And then he made his way across India as a snake catcher and a veterinarian and several other things.
Amazing life. And we saw, he has every document, every visa, every permit, photographs from all these countries. He always got photographed by different people. I mean, Turkey, Persia, all over the place. So he's got everything that he's kept. It's a remarkable record keeper.
Tell me this. Remember Jacques Vallée saying, analyzing UFO data and saying that if it appears that these craft can manipulate space and time, and if so, they could be from anywhere. They could be interdimensional. He sort of leaned away from the extraterrestrial hypothesis and went to interdimensional, although he could be extraterrestrial and interdimensional, traveling from some other reality. This is of interest to me because of the experiences on Skinwalker Ranch, where it appears to be somebody that lives among us, separated by some sort of dimensional membrane or something, as opposed to coming from other planets. Is there anything in Meier's material that suggests something like that, or is it literally it is another planet, another galaxy, or both?
No, there's interdimensional creatures involved also. I can't think of an example right now.
Well, wouldn't the doll universe be another dimension?
Well, it's an actual universe.
It,
Yeah, but
it's
it's-
explained as an opposite universe from ours. For manifestation to take place, you have polarity, and the polarity separates the two. So there's the positive universe and the negative universe makes both of them exist. If they were neutralized, neither would exist. So the dolls argue that they exist because we exist, and they're the opposing energy universe to ours. Everything is reversed. And they learned to navigate the barrier a long time ago, and one of their first communities they interacted with were the old Plaherans. And they helped them build the spaceships that are completely self-supporting now.
And Meyer has a photo of that universal barrier. It's in the through
remember
space,
that.
and still they fly.
What's it look like?
Well,
Kaleidoscope more than anything else.
show George what it looks like. The thing is that they speak of universes within universes, multiple existences because of altered dimensions and things. Frankly, it's beyond me. I figure that it's really boils down to no matter what all this is, some of it isn't useful to us in the sense of what can we do with it. But so what is the point of the case for us at this time in history? And that's where I think we have the greatest opportunity to make some progress. But it's also the greatest challenge because of the resistance of religion and small mindsets and what have you.
Well, I mean, mainstream science, cutting edge science anyway, is moving toward this stuff. The study of cosmology, the multiverse concept is catching on big time. It's a lot of what we go into in my stuff, my material as well. I mean, so that's where science is heading,
Well, I'm talking about how do we survive ourselves
Yeah.
element of the case. That I think at the top of that page shows a photo of the universal barrier or something.
What's this shift they do to get into our time space, or?
He says it's a shift of a part second of time, which to me means vibrations. It's slightly different vibrational range.
But in our vibration, if we went to their planet, we would not see them?
If in our vibration, you wouldn't see them. You'd have to make the shift to perceive them in their vibration. They say that when they enter our physical here, they can do it by mental effort up to about a half an hour, and then their mind begins to retire and they begin to reflex back. So they wear a field generator on their belt that generates a field around them, and that's why they appear to glow at night. There's very, very faint glow. It's because of the field that's generated around them, hold their vibrations into the physical spectrum of us.
I could really use one of those cigarette lighters that make you invisible too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd make you a hell of a reporter.
Oh yeah, and a lot more.
I think my own take is if we could see how they live, we'd probably be enormously depressed. Because if these people exist and if they live the way they let on that they live in harmony, love, they are not chasing green pieces of paper because they can travel in space and time and have anything they need. So they have long lifespans that they devote to learning and to making progress spiritually as well as technologically. If we saw people that were not looking over their shoulders, that were not afraid that there's always somebody coming to take what we have, and we'd go, well, why have we spent 10,000 years in this model? If somebody else can do it, why can't we do it?
It is depressing.
It is. I'm sorry about that. Well,
I don't
Let's go-
think.
Fred Bell will tell us about his semyaze and we'll be okay. No, it is.
Bell, the guy on the radio?
No,
No, that's
that's
Art
Art Bell.
That's Art Bell, okay.
Well, did Art interview you, or was it somebody else?
I've been on with Art, I think, 3 times, and on with George Norrie 3 times, and then with Ian Punnett or something. Or wait, I've been on 7 or 8 times. I was on again
Okay.
last 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago.
My good buddy from St. Louis emailed me after that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, hey man, I heard this guy talking about the Meyer case.
Yeah.
He must be crazy.
He said it was fascinating.
What's your relationship with Guido?
Wusberger?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I know Guido from, I met him once in the U.S. many years ago, maybe 12 years ago or more, and I met him over there a few times, and I helped by starting in about 2001, I guess, or 2000, whatever it was, with his book in English by going on the Art Bell show. We brought the book to the American public, so when I saw him in Switzerland, he was happy to meet me because we had made something happen.
So
for his
you're
book.
colleagues as opposed to competitors on this
Oh,
story.
there's nothing competitive at all. Actually, I don't find any competitiveness among anybody there because, again, everybody there is truly just a person trying to do the best thing. And when I first met 2 representatives from FIGU, Filia and Gunther came over. And this was, I think, in 2000. And just about the first thing they said, they speak English. Filia said, we just want to tell you, the first thing is that you have to understand that just because we are FIGU members and live there with Billy, we are not any more spiritually developed than you are, and we don't have all the answers to anything. We're learning this stuff as we go along too, so please don't make some projection about, we must be some way or other. We're just not. And they are just very straight-ahead, ordinary people. And
Tell me this, it seems to me I remember from reading Light Years that there had been infiltrations of Billy's group, this community, as a way to sabotage
One of
it.
the original core members, Hans Jakob, he wanted to take over the group. He was the most educated of the group. He was the attorney that had the weekly meetings or twice a month on Friday nights in his home. And he thought, Billy's first contacts with Semyasi started during that time, and Hans thought, and the rest of the group thought that the contact should have started with Hans. With Billy, the mistake was made when they picked Billy.
Why didn't they take me?
Yeah, right.
I'm
So
a
he
lawyer.
tried to take it over several times, and finally Semyasi said, well, it's impossible for him to become the contactee. First of all, he does not have the historical background. He didn't have the history. He wasn't the prophets. He's nothing but another person, and he doesn't have the education, knowledge, or understanding to comprehend ideas that we want to communicate with him. It's impossible. And he left the group.
yeah,
I
love
meant
that.
I meant more infiltration by those who want to muddy the waters or cast doubt on it, things of that sort of thing. It seems like every big story in ufology
Always.
starts out, wow, that really is interesting, and then it just goes to hell. Like
Right.
like Roswell is hopelessly
Yes.
muddled now, or like the guy in Florida, the guy with those
Ed-
photos, Ed
Adrian-
Walters, and
Adrian-
then
No,
the
Ed
Ed Walters.
Ed Walters.
Then
yeah,
the
all
model
those
was
things.
found in his
Right.
house. That kind of stuff. Didn't that happen here?
Oh, yes. Every big case. You mentioned the Santilli film. That has been popularly discredited by all of the clubs. They're the primary instruments that government uses. They keep them at each other, and they feed them lies and information that they think is valid information. They attack each other over it and slowly kill the case. But that Santelli case really happened. It happened 7 2/10 miles west of Socorro along the highway on the 1st of June. And our radar saw the craft coming in out of control. They knew about where it was going to impact. They had alerted the Army, and Army patrols were already on their way to close the highways. And they closed all the roads while the wreckage was still hot and heat waves coming up from it. The Army people on the scene first saw the occupants, 4 live occupants, release themselves from inside, and they were hovering under the overturned craft, all 4 of them clutching a black box to their breast like this. And the Army had orders to just cordon off the area and stay out of there, stay away. A team was coming out from Washington, and they would take over. So when the team arrived, it was a 1-star general and some officials and some scientists and the cameraman that took the movies. And when the Army commander on site briefed the general on what had happened all day long, that they had these black boxes they never let go of. The general turned to a sentry and said, "Give me one of those black boxes." And the guard went over and tried to pull it away from the wounded one. She was sitting down, or it was sitting down, and it didn't let go, and he bashed it in the head with his rifle butt, crushed it, dented his skull, and it died at the scene. That's the box he took to the general.
Well, I know about the Socorro crash and stuff. Is that the same film that Santilli had? Because
Well, the Socorro crash on the 1st of June?
well, I've heard about that crash
Okay,
before.
that's the one that the Santilli film was from. That's the cameraman that gave us, he gave us very accurate descriptions of the horizon line, what we would see from the site and how we would recognize the site from the highway. All of it worked checked perfectly. We found the place where the craft stubbed its toe in a wash and flipped on its back, leaning against a pile of rocks. The strange thing, the whole face of those rocks that it was leaning on had been cut away and hauled off. Anyway, you never could figure that out. Nothing else was disturbed. Just the ground that it rested on and the face of the rocks was all cut away and carried out of there. We found the refuse dump. We found their slit trench that they all pooped in while they were working it there. We found the farmer that was taken away, that was in his site of his farmhouse. He and his wife were taken to a motel and kept there by government paid the bill for 4 days before they were allowed to go back home again. They had cows and chickens, and when they were being taken away, they said, "What about the cows and the chickens?" And the Army said, "We'll take care of them." And when they got back, the cows had been milked, and the chickens had been fed, and the eggs had been gathered, and were all in a basket.
Bringing it back full circle to Meyer, it seemed I remember there had been people infiltrated either to spy on or sabotage or cast doubt on the legitimacy of the story.
Many attempts.
Is that still going on? Is there still surveillance of any kind?
Yes,
Yeah.
still surveillance.
But they haven't been able to break in because they're all very close-knit friends for the whole time. And there was a meeting in Scottsdale called by Bobby Inman's father, who called Jim Delatoso. He knew from Jim's testing the Pleiades pictures that we had chosen him to lead our science analysis because we had been degreed scientists, and they refused to let their name be used or their institution, always peer pressure. So we were looking for a scientist that didn't have the peer problem, and we found it in Jim Delatoso, who went to college until he was 28 years old, took all the sciences they had. He left college because there's nothing else to take. His dad was wealthy, and he kept him in college, and when Jim left, and there's nothing else to study, someplace along there he decided he not want to be caught up in the peer pressure, so he refused to write a paper on anything. But he took all the sciences, and when we'd go to optical sciences laboratory, he spoke the optical sciences lingo with them. When we were in a laser graphics laboratory, laser graphics lingo. Magnetics laboratory, magnetics lingo. And they all recognized him as a contemporary, even the degreed scientists. They called him Dr. Delatoso, and he didn't have a degree, and he didn't bother to correct him, and that's where Cal Korff said he's a fake, he doesn't even have a doctor. Well, he didn't have, but he went and wrote a paper and got one after the challenge.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Cal Korff right now is involved in fights with with 4 other skeptics. They're chewing each other up. Actually, if you want, afterwards, I'll bring it up on the internet. It's hysterical. He's got a website from Czechoslovakia, and he's now attacking and being attacked by 4 other skeptics.
That's what the ufologists are supposed to do, that. Fight each other. It's nice
Well,
to see the skeptics doing it.
These guys are just all over each other.
Well, anyway, back to this Santilli film. The cameraman gave us very accurate instructions. He told us where the tents were pitched, where the vehicles were parked. We found where both of those. He told us about what he photographed, that he took 2 or 3 cases of film with him, and the 60mm film only run 3 or 4 minutes on those little rolls that he had. And well, actually they were about that size, I think, canisters. They came in metal cans. he labeled every can. He had the general's name on a couple of the cans. That, and he told Michael Hessman that the reason he shot 130 rolls. And the reason he had the film left is because 100 rolls, or about 100 of them, were shot under satisfactory conditions, and he boxed those and sent them right to the address that he was supposed to. The rest of them, he knew he was going to have to push process them, so he had marked each can. Contact him again, he lost it, and then they thought they had them all and never followed up on it. So the story was real, the cameraman was real, and the footage was, you probably only saw one of the autopsy sequences. There were two autopsy sequences I've seen. I think there was a third one also. And the interesting thing is, the second autopsy sequence showed a body exactly like the one in the first sequence, but didn't have any injury to the wrist. The wrist was almost severed on the first one.
I'm gonna do that.
Bad wound in the thigh. The other one was complete, no damage to it. And the story that when Graham Birdsall was here from England, he published a magazine over there, an American agent just showed him credentials, said, we're going to let you in on the secret here. This was a 12-year-old Dallas girl that was mutilated for the film, and we're investigating that now, and they gave him the full story, which he went home and published. Well, if that was true, there would have to be twin mutilated 12-year-old Dallas girls, because the second autopsy was exactly like the first one, but it proceeded a little differently. In the first one, we saw him take the cranium off and take the brain out, right? In the second one, you saw him spread the legs and look at the pelvis area. And the doctor probed with his gloved hand in what looked like a vagina, and he got a blob of jelly-like pus or something. And inside was something about the size of a pea. When he showed it, it looked like the size of a green pea. He dropped it all in a little tray or a dish and was carried away. But another doctor viewing that sequence and the removal of the organs from the abdominal area, after they were removed, there was a football-shaped dark organ against the backbone. He said that looked like the creature might be an amniotic sac or an egg-producing organ in the body. There was a tube that ran from that dark thing against the backbone right down and out the opening between the legs, but there was no labia, no clitoris, no sexual organs of any kind, just the one aperture. So he suggested that they might reproduce with eggs that were either carried internally and then expelled live, or carried or laid and hatched someplace else. What's that?
I believe that's the potatoes au gratin.
Oh.
Wow. So,
Well, there's more, believe me.
so you got the chance.
I didn't realize they were going to do a bunch of individuals. I thought it was going to be all family style. But
So you were able to interview the cameraman himself?
Michael Hessman did.
Michael
over the
Hessman.
telephone, and he made sketches for Michael to follow to get us right to the crash site. The cameraman thought that when the Roswell story was released, he thought that he had been filming that Roswell story. And that's how he happened to mention it to Santilli's man that was looking for an Elvis Presley film. But it turned out, when we looked at the labels on the cans, that they were all filmed on the 1st of June, same year, 1947.
19 what?
47.
47?
1 month before the Roswell event.
okay, terrific. We'll pass the vegetables. That's good. Wonderful.
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
Now that was
That's it.
filet mignon.
Yeah, that's right. You want me to get something for you?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
I can get, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, feel free to everybody just get up and
The swordfish
we'll
and
move the
meat?
No,
vegetables
just
around.
the swordfish steak.
Okay.
Here, you want some peas?
Yeah.
What a fantastic meal, huh?
I'm telling you.
There's some sauces here. Would you like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Hessman still involved in the case?
Well, he came over here and we spent 2 weeks up there in the area interviewing farmers in the area. And
No, I mean in the Meyer case.
well, yeah, he's been to visit Meyer a number of times, yeah. They get along very well.
He was the one that interviewed all the people involved, correct?
Yeah.
Wasn't that his?
In German, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
You're
Michael.
welcome.
Some kind.
That looks good.
I'll have a little of this filet.
Wow.
Hang on a second.
It's all right. We'll get asparagus going.
Now, you gentlemen realize we've just told you part one of the 25-part story. So, you know how to throw a great evening, that's all I can tell you.
Asparagus, anybody?
So in other words, you'll need 25 more meals like
Yeah.
that.
George, I think you kind of get my drift. That's it. Wendell,
Well, we do
asparagus?
hope you will come back and we could do this again. I
Oh, you
think
come
that-
and visit us, we'll throw you a party.
All right, I like that. You got, that's a deal.
No, we can only accept one hospitality of this magnitude.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been planning this for a year and a half. George can tell you, it was about that long ago that I first said, hey, George, how about sitting down with my brother and I? And, yeah, sure. And then I loaned him a book.
Wow.
You know, and then it took him a while to read it. And I finally said, you know, I think my wife said, hey, can I get that book back? And then we had another conversation. And he said, sure, call me after sweeps. And, which that's when it was like, oh, hey, now the UFO conference is coming up. Oh, I got a shot at having, dinner with George. So, hey, let's invite Michael. Hey, let's invite Wendelle.
Wow.
And I'm glad everybody accepted.
Hey, I'm curious about something. I mean, according to the latest contact notes, or some of them, there are no longer any other
Some chicken for you?
Yes,
civilizations visiting this planet. Is that their take on it?
You know, I had a lot of problem with that at first because I was investigating other
Give me a piece
cases that
of
were
real
just as
juicy
sound as
now.
Billy's. And I came to understand that the Palladians tell him what they want him to believe. When I first got there, he was trying to look at other cases. And they kept telling him, don't waste your time on that. It's not a good case.
You guys help yourselves out with this.
Misrepresented, false information, this and that. To keep his interest focused on what they wanted him to focus on. So then when more information began to come out, then they began to tell him outright that that's not a real case. It's a misunderstanding, misperception. And I think that he came to a conclusion that if he didn't go along with them, they're not going to be too happy about it. So he,
I'm sorry, would you like
Well,
some of that?
Some chicken?
I mean, you're
no, thank you.
suggesting that they're lying to him.
well, I tried to resolve that. I don't think they're lying to him so much as helping him stay focused on what they want him to
Michael
focus on.
Carrots?
Well, if you insist. Thank you.
Baby heirlooms.
Good Lord.
Wow.
What are you? Dan, there's only so much you can eat.
You can have a little of everything, and that's all you need. And then I get a lot of
Boy,
leftovers.
who selected the menu?
I did.
Unbelievable.
There you go. Pass this one around. This is
What are these,
grilled
herrings?
tomatoes.
Carrot and vegetables.
Oh, I guess I'll try one.
I just told myself I wasn't going to take anything from another plate.
Carrots
but
and
I'm going to have to take.
Oh, you're bold.
And then string beans. And that one, I think that should be it.
That looks like I'll trade you.
I think what you're trying to do is ruin us for any other opportunity to speak about the Meyer case. This is it, we're done.
Yeah,
Mike.
sorry, one more.
Wait till the word gets out about the special Stirling
Jeez.
Club UFO gatherings.
Yeah.
Knocking down your doors.
I want a copy of this just for my friends that love to eat. You will not believe what happened to us.
Well, I wanted it to be memorable.
At least memorable. all
You
right.
betcha.
All right. Want to try that? Sweet and sour fruit compote. Send it around.
George is thrown in the towel.
I just don't know. That
a little
smells so
bit.
good, though. I got to try some of it. Michael, you want to try some of that?
I can't do it. Thanks.
You guys have a place to file that.
It's all right, we can graze for the evening.
Oh my goodness. I thought that was dinner before when we had the shrimp and stuff.
Yeah, one shrimp was dinner.
Whoa.
Shrimpzilla.
It's a tradition at any party I throw is big shrimp.
Wow.
I can't get my hands around the Roswell case at all.
What
That case with the, you know, the Scintilla film, that I can, it looked so real to me, I had a hard time believing that was fake.
It wasn't fake, Dave.
But
The autopsy was done at Fort Worth, in a field hospital at Fort Worth.
Is that information that came from the Play Arms to
That's where
responsibility
the cameraman
questions?
filmed it.
Huh?
That's where the cameraman filmed it.
Right. Well, ostensibly, but I mean, is this the type of stuff that Billy, when this comes out, he asks questions to see what they're taking on?
I don't know that Billy asked questions about this of the Palladium, do you know?
About the Scintilla? Well, this is where it's controversial. Supposedly, they had said that the, pardon me, everything's just too good. They had said that it was a hoax, and that it was a human girl who was deformed. Now, frankly, I didn't buy that. It just doesn't make sense to me.
That's the story that NSA was putting out,
Who was?
National Security Agency.
Oh. And I don't know. I just don't. Here's my take on Roswell is a little cynical, though, because I think that Roswell, as a preoccupation, to be perfectly blunt, it's a dead end. You have nothing left. And
Right.
what are you going to do? It's like having your foot nailed to the floor and you go around in a circle. And again, with all due respect to everything UFO and paranormal, the Meyer case, if it's about anything, it's about us. And it's about us from a certain perspective that's going to be very challenging, and even by their own admission, it's going to take us centuries to digest. I personally don't want to take centuries to digest it. I want to find out what value I can extract from it now. And as I say, I can't prove that everything in the case is true, and I know the case is authentic. Yes, the case is real. Yes, you just run out of real provable options on certain things, but as for everything, how will we know until we know?
Well, that's right. No UFO case is real to anyone until they've had one for themselves.
Yeah, but again, like UFOs, I was in last June and last August, was lying on the ground. I was living in a little place in Mar Vista, Los Angeles, lying on the ground because I was resting, and I like lying on the ground. I get renewed by that. Looking up at the sky, and I see this white, looks like a balloon, flying overhead, and it suddenly stops. I went, that's kind of weird. And then it did a circle, stopped, reversed, went back a ways, did a right angle, and disappeared. And that happened twice in 3 months. And if I hadn't, let's say, accepted in my mind one explanation from the Meyer case, i.e., that the majority of what we see is not extraterrestrial. It's secret U.S. military craft, especially over the U.S., and that there are other parties that have alternative craft. They don't have the same capabilities, but they're far more advanced than our regular craft. So, okay, I saw clear daylight twice, UFO. I've also seen UFOs in Sedona, and there's nothing I can do with it. It didn't give me any content. For instance, I have an internet battle with a guy named James Gilliland. He gives me a videotape 3-4 years ago to bring to Meyer. Why don't you ask Billy Meyer, take a look at our UFOs here? I said, okay. So, give it to Billy. I expect I'll hear back from Billy in about 3 or 4 months. 3 days later on a Thursday, or was it a Friday, calls me in his office and says, do you want to know about that tape you gave me? I said, yeah. He says, Patah and I watched it for 2.5 hours yesterday. I said, really? He says, yes. Do you want to know what Patah said? I said, yes. So he sat down, turns the tape on, and he says, okay, these things that are flying here, this is secret U.S. military. This isn't extraterrestrial. And James Gilliland shows this burn mark on his chest that he says comes from an extraterrestrial. And Billy rolls his eyes and goes, why? He Says it's so illogical. Why would an extraterrestrial have to burn somebody? Ptah says this is the man's consciousness is burning out from all of his own mental machinations, and this is not necessary from an extraterrestrial. So he basically says,
Rationalizing.
yeah. And so I send back the information to Gilliland, who of course then starts attacking me, Meyer, the Meyer case, et cetera, because, and saying, come up here, you can see it for yourself. And I said, look, I know this is going to sound strange, James. I'm not interested in UFOs. I said, I'm interested in the content. What is your information from your contacts? You and the Meyer, and he goes on diatribes, literally, the columns this deep in email and tiny type, attacking Meyer's got a cult and it's a franchise and it's a this and it's that and he's not the only contactee and you should come and see. And
He's in Washington State.
Yeah. And so, even recently I've heard from him again. And I just said, look, just send me the information. What is the value here with these so-called contacts? There are no contacts. There's phenomena. And if you take a step back, why would people travel light years to get to Earth to dance in the sky for a bunch of hippies?
Right.
Or for any of us, for the
Yeah,
most
if they're
part.
here, they're for a real reason.
For a reason, and for most part, if they're going to be observed, it's not going to be frequent because they're observing. There's got to be some reason that more advanced beings want to look in. They're not going to come down here and hang out with us. For instance, Michael Sala talks about 2 extraterrestrial women on the underground in London that were abducted off of a train, and then there were some extraterrestrials in a grocery line in a store. And I said, what were they doing? Reading a tabloid about extraterrestrials in a grocery line? So people are full of this illogical stuff. And what are we going to do? We're all from one place, this universe. Some folks have more advanced technology and they can get around. They've come here if they have come here, and there's a reason for it. It's not to just dance around and entertain people. That's why I come back to the material in the Meyer case that has gotten my attention over the past several years for sure. It's trying to tell us about what's coming to us. I did a search online.
Coming back at you.
Accidentally, I did a search, actually. And I found that in the approximately past 60 years, something I never knew, the U.S. had launched over 200 unprovoked attacks against other countries. Over 200 acts of aggression of various sorts against people that had never attacked us. Now, the best bit of religion, I think if there was anything in religion that I would embrace wholeheartedly, is do unto others as you would have others. That's the law of cause and effect. In those days, they were trying to explain to us the law of cause and effect. Well, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay, so if you attack 200 times in 60 years other people,
What do you expect, yeah?
the pendulum's coming back, folks, and it's not a pendulum, it's a wrecking ball. And it's coming back in a lot of different forms. That's why it drives me to almost to wordlessness, or I have to just blather on about the Meyer case is trying to get us to wake up.
Thank you.
On his website, by the way, is the Enoch Prophecies. Go check those out, okay? Because they're scary.
Would you say they're scary?
They're scary. They're very much, the fall of France to the Islamists, who then, now they have a whole lot of nuclear weapons, okay? And that's probably why Russia would invade, is because,
To prevent that from happening.
well, what are they going to do with those nuclear weapons? That's submarines, missiles, it's everything.
Yeah.
That to me is a big deal. The fall of Europe to the Islamists, and the near collapse of Germany.
Collapse of Britain. Britain will be brought down to the lowest level of misery, according to this. And the prophecies, the older prophecies, talk a bit more in poetic form. The crown of Windsor falls, and the yellow, the yellow dragon from the east and the red something come together against the west, as they have been planning for. This was like published in the 50s or 60s in the Meyer stuff. And here, we collectively are sitting around going, gee, UFOs. That's not why I do it. It's fascinating, but we ain't getting one. You know, we're not going to be. Frankly, what's a UFO? If this room was the interior of a UFO, this is the experience we'd have traveling through space.
Right.
You don't feel it. So we have sensationalized ideas about everything. We see something moving about, so we project some excitement about it. When it's somebody in a room looking at a screen, watching us watch them. And what does it boil down to again? It boils down to we're being asked to take responsibility for ourselves.
Tell me this, are you, when you're over there with Meyer, are you able to request, show me something? Call him up, let's see it.
I know people that have
requested
seen
the
them.
metal specimens, and it took him a couple of weeks to get them, but he finally got 4 different metal specimens for us.
But I mean, to see something yourself with your own eyes. Or-
I haven't, but people I know very well have. One guy I was working with told me the year before, we were sitting on this one hill, he says, well, this is where I was sitting. I said, well, when you were sitting for what? When the ship came across the hill, the treetops. I said, at night? He says, no, broad daylight. He said it was, like this big, and he said if I didn't know that Meyer was telling the truth up until then, he says, I know now for myself. A couple other people I know have seen the ships at night, but not everybody sees the ships. Mm-hmm. There's some
I
people
never
at
did.
FIGU that don't even believe in the ET part of it. What? 1 or 2 people said, I don't really know about this ET thing, but the teachings are important. His stepson, who's supposedly going to be the next leader, we interview him, and he says, I'm not so sure I want to be the leader of this group, I'm a journalist, and I have different criteria for truth, and there are a bunch of free thinkers up there. They're not drinking Kool-Aid together. Very different than what you expect. To prove my devotion to truth, I will walk to meet the filet mignon. Really.
Absolutely.
I don't know if camera 1 or camera 2 will get this, but I will walk the filet mignon back towards Wendelle.
Well, you mentioned that filet mignon. You bet.
Would you like some?
No, I
Oh, I went and got it for you. Oh, well, now that I've got it, maybe I'll take some.
If anybody's into sweets, this compote is just wonderful.
oh yeah, pass that down.
Did we do this before in Rome, maybe a couple
we do
thousand?
this in what?
In Rome or someplace
Yeah.
before?
Yeah,
I mean, this
maybe.
is not, this is
Maybe in a former life.
in previous incarceration. But this is the part of it with Roswell and everything else. I think part of the problem with the UFO stuff is it keeps people going around in a circle where they never get out of the box to what it's about.
Well, that's because they're just trying to prove a different phenomenon, and they don't attach any significance other than, well, maybe we're being visited, but we don't know what it's all about. This has got. I mean, is there anything else in UFOlogy that anybody knows of where there are contact notes like this, that there is this much kind of information? George, do you?
And not this many.
I don't, and I don't know of anything that's been as useful or could be as useful to people.
Right.
Could be as useful to people. There's information in this case about mad cow disease, about Alzheimer's, about different things that are so broad. You cannot imagine it. It's just that most of it's in German. I only know that stuff's in there because a buddy of mine gets those contact blocks, like Wendell's talking about, and runs them through an online translator just to pass, and you start seeing this material. It's got to do with everything: scientific discoveries, historical discoveries, archaeological things. How would Meyer make all this up and have it be right?
Right, and it's not. And now my understanding is that there's not. You take the Gene Dixons and all of the other prophets or whatever, and they have certain percentage of hits and a whole big percentage of of not hits. There's not a body of no hits, right? There's.
I haven't found it.
I haven't found any.
No, and what's it's like even this thing with Mount Chimborazo.
No, thank you.
Meyer was
Which is what? That's the tallest
mountain on Earth.
as opposed to Everest.
And Meyer is told that casually in 1975 or 6 when he's in the spaceship with Semyaze, and he mentions Mount Everest as the tallest mountain. She says, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're mistaken." And he says, "Well, what do you mean? I know it's the tallest mountain on Earth." And she says, "Well, no, you're only measuring from sea level. When you measure from the center of the Earth, because the Earth is elliptical, it's Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador or Peru, wherever it is." And sure enough, some years later, they come out with the finding, oh, it's actually Mount Chimborazo is the tallest mountain on Earth. But it's so many areas like this where you go from one thing to another thing to another thing, and you keep asking, what's the point? What's the purpose? Purpose is to help us wake up. I mean, we're in a dream that we just refuse to accept that we're in a dream. We have a country that is setting in motion everything that is required to destroy itself.
Well, we are the, I mean, we've been called the Great Satan, but we are the destructive force on this planet.
Well, elements within our country are the destructive force, along with elements from other countries.
Right.
The Meyer material is an equal opportunity offender. They've got something bad to say about everybody, but they reserve larger dosage for those that are more powerful and can do more damage, and we're right in there. And they talked about a test of a weapon that was prevented by the play iron, a chain reaction. Oh, you remember this?
Yeah.
The chain reaction weapon. If it had been detonated, within 8 minutes, the entire atmosphere of the Earth would have been on fire, and the planet would have been incinerated, and they couldn't have stopped it. So they had to actually prevent the testing of this weapon. And I'm going to guess that what they also did is they may have erased the memory on the people who created it, so it couldn't be created again for a while.
This was a super weapon that somebody,
It was out in the Inuit Atoll where we were testing our bombs, and the last big test, above ground test there, was on a little island where they had the device on a tower, and they were going to test the next stage up from, we had the fission bomb, the fission fusion bomb, hydrogen bomb, fission fusion bomb. The next step was the cadmium bomb. And the cadmium, each one took the lower energy to raise it to the next level for the next one.
Right, yeah.
So a hydrogen bomb had to be the trigger for a
cadmium. I mean, it's like an
thermonuclear
like
bomb.
an atomic bomb. It triggers
thermonuclear bomb had to be a trigger for the cadmium bomb. So our scientists foolishly tested a cadmium bomb on this island that blew a hole in the ocean 500 feet deep and a mile across, and completely vaporized the island that it was sitting on and half the island next to it. And had it not been over that much water and picked up that much water vapor in the explosion, it would have continued. The water tamped it down enough so the chain stopped at the cadmium bomb, but the cadmium bomb would have, without the water, would have raised the temperature enough to picked up the next one in the chain, then the next, then the next, and we'd be an asteroid belt. So the scientists that calculated the yield on the cadmium bomb were off by 1,000-fold. It was 1,000 times more powerful than they calculated.
I think they said, oops.
Yeah.
Those guys had from here, though. I mean, all those guys testing that stuff was from here in Nevada. A lot of it.
Yeah.
A lot of the same person.
To be 1,000 times off, that's serious error in my mind. And just by the grace of God, we tested it where there was enough water to keep it from expanding. And the Richard Miller contacts told us one time about that, and they told us that your chemical formula for that explosion would have been cal-neutronite, and then they broke it down. That would be a chemical named cadmium, aluminum, lithium, nitrogen, and on up about 4 or 5 more elements in it.
And that's the same explosion they say created the asteroid belt from that planet, right? The same weapon, right?
If it didn't have enough water in it to cool it down as it was propagating, it would have rendered the planet. Continued until the planet blew.
Yeah.
So they talk about the asteroid belt being
The remnant-
a remnant of
another planet.
a
Of
another
sister
planet.
that they destroyed themselves, right? You said.
Yeah.
And how did they do that? They opened up.
They used nuclear weapons, and they also diverted seawater into magma chambers of volcanoes.
For what? Do you remember? Did they say for what purpose?
Well, they were fighting with each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So they decided to. Somebody was going to be the biggest, bad guy on the block, I guess, and I guess a combination of fast-acting ingredients blew the thing apart. And a cosmic catastrophe was probably the destroyer comet coming through that threw Mars off, so that everybody there was pretty well wiped out. And they talk about Monument Valley, Fire Valley, and Death Valley as being the remnants of nuclear war on this continent about 50,000 years ago.
Baalbek Terrace and
In Lebanon,
yeah.
and then you've got Sodom and Gomorrah, and even Japan with the Takauti.
There's one in Japan.
You're saying all those, now you mentioned that on the phone. So, I mean, this is nuclear war 50, 60,000 years ago. But why isn't there any evidence of previous civilizations other than these,
Well-
skulls that we're digging up, which are, are supposedly our evolutionary ancestors?
I think that in some areas, if there was really mammoth destruction, you could have whole mass going under, being taken into the sea. You have glass-like surfaces in some areas. You know exactly where those
The
are?
Gobi Desert.
Yeah, the Gobi Desert was Lemuria.
Mu.
Or Mu, and they say that Atlantis was destroyed when scientists from Lemuria mounted a propulsion system on a huge chunk of asteroid and directed it down over Atlantis, and it broke up into chunks and hit the continent there. Pardon me.
Bless you.
And thanks. And Atlantis sunk when the crust was cracked and magma and water are coming up and stuff. But the other thing that they've said, and I don't know if this is true either, but they've said that there are times in which certain discoveries are withheld, the ability for us to discover certain things until humanity is ready for the discovery. I don't know if that's just double talk or not. But of course, there's always the rumors of different discoveries that have been made that have been hidden away, like the giants, the various giant bones that have been found allegedly in places, in caves, different writing and stuff, and things get sequestered away, by powers that be that don't want to rock the boat. The whole thing with UFOs being a cover-up is completely logical. What control system, what terrestrial control system, military, political, religious, economic, social, whatever, would want to be destabilized by having to acknowledge the existence of more advanced beings that operate outside of any constraints that we could possibly apply to them? That, for the masses of humanity, is So for 50, 60 years, you have to see different images into the society of extraterrestrials and UFOs, for better, for worse, benevolent, then you get the evil ones. They claim that the cover-up started First World War, when the major powers were seeing the darn things over the battlefields, and there was a kind of conspiracy of silence, even among the enemies, to not talk about something that clearly none of them were in control of. And that Harding and Coolidge and Roosevelt, they all put restraints on and then ultimately worked to disinform about UFOs and ETs and to make them a negative thing to be feared. That the War of the Worlds broadcast was a strong-arm job under Roosevelt, I guess, and with cooperation of the CIA and all, telling Orson Welles and H.G. Wells, you will do this if you want to live and if you want your families to live.
You will do this broadcast?
Yes, that's what it says in the Meyer material. So I'm a reporter on this. I don't know. This stuff is content of the case that I've come across. This is why I say there's a lot I cannot prove, but it's very stimulating. I mean, according to Play Aaron, the Dalai Lama is a CIA asset. The Microsoft Vista program is an NSA collaboration with Microsoft to get in everybody's computers. AOL is a CIA asset. There's a lot of stuff. They put it out. The TWA 800 crash was caused by a Navy missile. They were saying that before Pierre Salinger. I've got the document.
The Play Aarons were saying that? Mm-hmm. No kidding.
They said at first that they weren't sure because on board the plane were some French Secret Service people that apparently had gotten a hold of some information. Am I remembering this right?
Yeah.
Okay, and they thought it might have been because of these Secret Service people that the plane got taken down. But then they said that their research showed them that it was a misidentification by the Navy, misidentifying the plane as an unknown flying object, and a Navy missile was launched and brought it down. That's their story. I mean, there's volumes of stuff. Now, I have most of the stuff is on my site. You just have to look under the different headings, like things you're not supposed to know. There's a lot in there. And the guys in Australia, the Gaia guys, husband and wife team who are fighting their own battles over there, translate Meyer stuff all the time. And that's the only reason we've got the new translations. And you read this stuff, and it is mind-boggling. And you know the thing I told you about the conversation with Gilliland and all this stuff? So when I had that conversation with Meyer, well, my buddy had bought all the contact blocks, and he sends me some translations from May of 2003 or whenever that was that it happened. And there in there is the conversation Meyer's having with Ptah on the Gilliland table, right in the contact. So, you know, if somebody's trying to pull the wool over, how would I ever see those German notes?
Yeah.
And that same exact thing. So I just get that Billy's truthful, like Wendelle says. Do they tell him everything? I don't know. But he also has his own abilities. That's another sleeper, because the stuff we're seeing from 1951 and 58, stuff that he was helped with, by Ptah, but he also says, these things I have seen because he was trained to do this. Ptah knew that Meyer's spirit was this enormously ancient prophetic spirit, but the Pleiaren didn't know it and didn't find it out until the late 90s, that he was this actual reincarnation of this Nocodemian character from 12 billion years ago. And this is farther out than Star Wars, guys.
Billy goes back 12 billion years?
More than that.
Billy, really?
Only 12
Oh,
billion.
only a mere 12
The
billion.
spirit form that is currently embodied as Swiss farmer Billy Meyer
Yeah.
is this ancient form. Now, this story is that this Nocodemian guy, billions of years ago, was a very powerful leader, an advanced being in, I think in the Lyra, no, in another system, Lassen or someplace. And he brought a lot of, people under his rulership and got them to live according to creational law. But after he had already gone into the lower levels of the spiritual planes, he had gone into the disembodied, but the very lower levels, I guess the Arahat Athasata, that his peoples had now gone and become degenerated into warlike factions and this, that, and the other thing, and were all off course evolutionarily, so that his spirit form volunteered to come back into the incarnational cycle, to come back and try to straighten out that gig, and then act as a prophet in different worlds where spiritual information was ready to be brought into these worlds. That's kind of how I understand what that is. And so ultimately he gets, these incarnations on this world starting long ago with the two incarnations as an Enoch or Henoch character.
Okay, you mentioned that in the next issue of, and Yet They Fly or whatever it is, or no, in the Talmud, that they're going to release the prophecies of Enoch and Elijah.
Elijah
I think I'm full.
and Jeremiah.
And we're certainly going to wait.
And I've read them. And they're,
Oh, yeah.
And are they relating to this time?
yeah, that's why they're so depressing.
It's really difficult to accept that, from 3,000 years ago, they're talking about 2,000